Hey, beer appreciators, สวัสดีครับ Welcome to Beer Time Story, the platform where beer and brewing knowledge is shared. For today's session, we will have some good burps about Wester than West Coast IPA. Yes, that's right. Today, it is all about beer that is more West than the West Coast IPA itself. And probably you may wonder, like, what the heck am I talking about, right? But before we go any further, let's pause for a minute or two and have a look at this photo together. Um, what you see here are the two beers that share a similar shade of beautiful pale color. They both look brilliantly clear and have a very appealing thirst quencher vibe that looks like they are shouting at us, say, "Hey, drink me, I'm crispy," kind of thing. Now, what about these two beers, right? Well, the one on the left is an American light lager that comes with a high drinkability, from course, of course, from this photo, and it clocks in at about 4 to 5% ABV. Next, for the beer on the right, it looks like an American light lager or pale kind of beer of some kind, but tastes nothing like one. It comes in about 6 to 7 ish% ABV, and if we wind the clock back for about a decade ago, and I tell you that this is an American West Coast IPA, then probably like half of you or more will not believe me. Like, where is the golden orange hue or copper color thing, right? Um, well, things evolve here, folks. Including the West Coast IPA, and perhaps the beer on the left may have a role to play in this evolution. What is this Western and West Coast IPA beer? How can something be Western than a West Coast IPA? And what about a cold IPA, the style of beer that you probably have heard about it before? These questions are the few that will drive today's session. And the one who will take us down the road is none other than our guest speaker, who happened to give birth to this Western and West Coast IPA. And here is a snapshot of his background. He was an avid home brewer who has a passion for lager beers and happened to dive into the rabbit hole of the brewing world so deep that he ended up quitting his day job and went to the World Brewing Academy to get a diploma in brewing technology in 2009. With this formal brewing education on hand, he landed his first brewing job at Chuckanut Breweries in Washington, which is considered to be, one of the best lager-focused breweries in America. For the next decade or so, he continued sharpening his brewing skills around the West Coast area, including the famous Firestone Walker Brewery. Then, in 2015, when he came across an opportunity to be a part of the like-minded Lagerhead team to establish a lager-focused modern brewery in Portland, Oregon, um, he seized that opportunity and became their founding brewmaster. The brewery name is Wayfinder, and that's where he began weaving the concept of Western and West Coast IPA beer. Now, fast forward to 2023, he departed Wayfinder, moved to McMinnville, Oregon, and together with his wife, founded a brewery called Goldot, which he has been overseeing brewery's day-to-day operation until today, including the brewing of this Western and West Coast IPA. So, please welcome our guest speaker, Kevin Davy.
Hello. How are you
Hey,
doing?
Kevin.
Hi.
I'm doing good. Yeah, welcome to the platform, man. And just sorry for this a little bit long or dragging introduction.
No, it's okay. I feel like I'm very, very important with such a long introduction. So
That's kind of good.
yeah.
So how are things in McMinnville?
Really good. I moved down here during the pandemic. Um,
Hmm.
it's about an hour away from Portland, and I
Right?
was commuting up to Portland the whole time, and decided, you know what? I like living in the countryside a lot more than I like living in the city. So here we
It's
are.
good. It's a bit calmer. Things move a little bit slower. That's
A little
good.
bit
That's
slower.
good.
It's nice.
Yeah.
And we make a lot of
Yes.
lager beer. So we're a lager beer brewery, and so we have more room to keep the beer longer and cold for a long time, which is important.
Yes. That's good. That's brilliant. I see that you just back from a Europe trip with your wife a couple of weeks ago. How was it?
It was amazing. I have not been back. So when I first Studied brewing at Siebel Institute of Technology in Chicago and also the
Hmm.
Dumas Academy in Munich. Um, that was the last time I had been in Europe. So this was 16 years ago. And I went
Wow.
back we went back to, what happened is we won the Bitburger Challenge. So Bitburger
Oh yeah.
Brewery out of Bitburg puts on a
Hmm.
competition who can make the best German style Pilsner. And we won it. So my wife is also a brewer. And when we bought the brewery and started Gold Dot, we actually bought her father's brewery. So
Hmm.
that is called Heater Allen. I've got this
Heath
right.
Allen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
Gold Dot is kind of like a little subset of Heater Allen, but we make all the beer here. So we were actually in Germany to go visit Bitburg
Hmm.
and meet the players there. We also went to Bamberg. We went to Munich. We went all the way to Pilsen and Prague
Oh, okay.
as well. So
Hmm.
we had a very long trip, um, and drank a lot of great beer there.
Cool, man. I bet you had a great time over there. Food, beers, and all the environment things.
Yeah, it was very much centering for me because to drink the German beer again, this is what I studied, um, to brew, and what I wanted to accomplish as a brewer is to make German and Czech style beers, make light, delicate, easy drinking lagers. It's maybe a bit ironic, that the IPA has become such a force for me, but
Yeah.
my heart is with Helles. My heart is with Helles and Pilsner and Dunkel.
Yeah, that's your fortress. And I think it's always good to recalibrate your tongue from time to time, go to
Absolutely.
the source and yeah, enjoy it. That's cool. Kevin, I think, let's warm up our conversation a little bit more here before we talk about IPA, of course.
Hmm.
Let's talk a bit about your home now, the Godot Brewery slash Heater Allen. Can you share, with us, about the concept of the breweries, its capacity, and some of the beer that you guys are brewing there?
Sure. I'll start with Heater Allen. Heater Allen's been
Okay.
brewing beer, our flagship Pilsner beer,
Hmm.
for 18 years now. Um,
From yes.
and in the same location, we have since taken over the whole building. We were originally just part of the building.
Hmm.
And we expanded. The picture that you're seeing is our new cellar. We just got finished building up the floors and putting in all those tanks. And then
Cool.
launching our own little sub brand, Gold Dot, which is also
Hmm.
the nice logos that you have there. We've always so Heater Allen Pilsner was Rick, Lisa's dad, who founded it, Rick Allen.
Hmm.
He took a tour at Pilsner Kell in Pilsen, and the beer that they had unfiltered off the tanks at the bottom of in the basement, the cellars, um, it was unfiltered, and he said, "Gosh darn it, that's the best lager I've ever had in my life." And so his sole objective was to make this style of beer, make Pilsner unfiltered in
Hmm.
McMinnville. And so that's pretty much what we did as Heater Allen for years and years. We had a couple other beers like an Oktoberfest and a Doppelbock, Mid-Kolsch. But
Right.
really, the main bread and butter of our brewery has been making Pilsner. We make about 70, even now, we make about 70% of our total production goes into making Pilsner. Um,
Wow.
when Lisa and Rick decided to kind of retire a bit. He's taking a step back, letting the new
Hmm.
generation take over and run the brewery. Um, we wanted to make other beers, but we also wanted to make Cold IPA and some other IPAs. And we
Right.
thought it would be disingenuous to make gold to make Heater Allen IPA. I don't think our customers that were knew the brand
Hmm.
for as long as they had been around would want us to make IPA. So that's why that was really the inspiration for us to make Gold Dot beer. And so
Hmm.
Gold Dot beer is also just we're breaking a few of the rules that Heater Allen used to do. We're filtering these beers. We're not always filtering. We're making IPAs.
Hmm.
We want to expand and make English beers at some point. We want to do some other things that maybe Heater Allen was maybe not afraid to do, but just wasn't really part of their repertoire or what they
Right.
come
More experimental stuff.
exactly. Um, so right now we're kind of just doing the core line. all of these beers that you see up there are kind of based on
Hmm.
another European beer. The Helles
Right.
Lager is based on Augustiner. The Pils to Pils is based on Bitburger.
Mm.
Um, the dark lager, I don't know if we have a direct, maybe Weltenberger. I don't think we have a direct
Okay,
beer
like
that
a
we
connection.
that
Yeah,
we
yeah.
think it's an homage to.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
yeah, black beer, Ufleku, West Coast IPAs, our Slim Digs West Coast IPA. That is just trying to be like Russian River or Firestone Walker.
Right. And then
And
you
Cold
have the
IPA we made
Cold
up.
IPA. Yeah, that's cool. Going through all this list, but for the big idea, you see that the majority of your beer there is still, centered around the world of lager,
Yes,
and
very much.
I I really appreciate it. Like all this kind of thing. 'Cause, people think like this is probably off the topic, but they kind of see that lager is just lager beer, but there are a lot of variations under this umbrella. The same thing apply to ale worlds, and I think
Right.
this kind of helps spread the appreciation for lager style of beer too. Yeah.
I think that lager is underappreciated, especially here in America, where when we think of lager beer, we always think of Bud Miller and Coors,
Yeah.
um, the big ones. We had a vibrant lager culture in America, but it didn't survive Prohibition.
Oh yeah.
That pretty much lost a generation of beer drinkers. So
Hmm.
we're trying to build it back, but the original craft beer um, revolution was started mainly by Sierra Nevada and
Hmm.
some of the
Anchor.
on the
Hmm.
West Coast that were making ales. And
Yeah.
so the especially here on the West Coast, I say in America, but on the East Coast, Sam Adams and some of those guys were definitely lager centric.
Right.
But I have always felt like it's a little misunderstood because craft beer has been very much ale dominant uh,
Hmm.
for I think its inception, and it's starting to change around. I think people are excited about lager beer, especially right now.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think this kind of phenomena is also being observed around the world too. With the revolution or the rise of craft beer, it's
Hmm.
kind of come with ale first, and then people tend to slide their interest or expand their palate or explore more into the realm of lager.
Right, and I think that there's been more of a lager influence, especially in Eastern Europe and
Hmm.
like Russia and Poland and Czech Republic.
Hmm.
These places had pretty vibrant lager culture before, and so putting craft on there, I think, especially when it comes to West Coast or Wester than West Coast cold IPA, easy to adopt. And
Hmm.
I also think lager beers are very popular in Asia as well,
Yeah.
especially in. I can't speak for everybody, but it seems like there's just such a vibrant scene in Japan
Hmm.
um,
Hmm.
and in Korea and some of the other spots. I can't speak for everywhere in Eastern Asia, but
Right, but we get the idea, of course, of
yeah,
course.
it's exciting. It's also, there's I'm excited for this next lager revel. I'm excited that people are taking it more seriously. It's a more nuanced flavor, and nuanced flavor is just sometimes people don't really understand that
Hmm.
because it tastes like there's less in there that it actually can still taste better.
Of course,
Of course.
totally agree. Yeah, totally agree. All right, cool. I think our engine is kind of heating up real good, and I think we can head to the main track. So the Western and West Coast IPA, which seems a bit contrary to what we have paved, in the beginning of this session. We talk a lot
Yep.
about lagers. Okay, Kevin. So let's kick off this session with this question, which I'm personally very curious about. Where did this Western and West Coast IPA concept come from? Where what is it backstory?
Well, it was at Wayfinder. We were building out our first beers there, and at Wayfinder, we were always going to be, we called ourselves a lager centric brewery. So we wanted to be about 50% lager and 50% IPA pretty much, because in Portland, you just have to make IPA. It's the IPA
Hmm.
of the world. The between Portland and Seattle, all the hops are grown in that little spot, and
Yeah.
we're blessed with a lot of great IPA brewers. Um, but we wanted to do something else that was kind of cool. And so this was also, so I made a regular West Coast IPA, or at the time, or just like an American IPA, and we made also a hazy IPA.
Mm-hmm.
At that point, it was 18.
Mm-hmm.
Hazy IPA was very popular in Portland, and I wanted to make something that was the antithesis of hazy IPA.
Mm-hmm.
So, which for hazy IPA, it's a bit sweeter. I know. I think that if you talk to New England IPA brewers, they will say that hazy or New England IPA is not supposed to be sweet. But the ones that we try are a bit sweeter. They're very
Mm-hmm.
low bitterness.
Mm-hmm.
They're soft. They have a certain amount of minerality. They have a big tropical aroma. They don't have any of the old school hops, the pine, the tar, the more aggressive,
The
um,
resin, yeah, yeah.
yeah, the more resinous kind of dank stuff. It's more focusing on the tropical aromas, a lot of New Zealand varieties, and then Citra and Mosaic and Simcoe.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
would be the three main
Real,
players,
yeah, yeah.
and to a lesser degree also like Nelson Sauvin. And
Mm-hmm.
so what we had this regular IPA on the draft menu. We had a hazy IPA, and I was thinking, well, how can I make another IPA that just totally looks different? And at the time, I had so Wayfinder was built with a decoction kettle, a cereal
Mm-hmm.
cook, and that
Mm-hmm.
was a way that we wanted to make more impactful, flavorful lager beers, was being able to use cereal mash decoctions.
Right.
And I, um, because we had invested in that, I had also brewed an American lager with like 30% rice,
Mm-hmm.
and tried to do other things with corn as well. And that was really exciting for me. And I said, well, what if it was like malt liquor, like a
Mm-hmm.
very high adjunct beer, but hopped like an IPA and fermented warm and fermented quickly. So you still
Mm-hmm.
had kind of that quick fermented lager, the warm, quick fermented lager, which is I don't know if I don't know if a lot of the viewers would know, but there's a local brewery here called Rainier, and
Okay, no. Mm-hmm.
it's
Mm-hmm.
named after the mountain Rainier, and
Okay.
it heritage brewery, been around for a very long time, and they used to make a beer called Rainier Ale,
Mm-hmm.
and it was their regular lager beer that they just had it in very high gravity, very strong, and fermented it really warm, so it's kind of come across like an ale. It was kind of
With
like a
lager yeast, right?
yeah, with lager yeast, and I always thought it was kind of cheeky because it obviously wasn't, and it didn't come across like an ale, and
Right.
it was just a weird beer. And so it was kind of an inspired in that regard, that okay, well, this is kind of like a malt liquor attempt. All right, well, let's try to do it. So we made a beer with 30% rice
Mm-hmm.
and at a gravity of 15 Plato, and hopped it like a West Coast IPA aggressively,
Mm-hmm.
with a lot of bittering hops and a lot of finishing hops, and then a lot of dry hops. Um, and we at the time we used some old school hops like Centennial, but we also used some new school hops like Mosaic,
Mm-hmm.
and some old school hops, dry hop flows. We were using Chinook and Cascade, and some American Amarillo, Oregon
Right.
Amarillo at the time too, which was more fruity. And so you
Mm-hmm.
had this really cool canvas, but what we found was not only you're making a stronger gravity beer, but the color looks like you pointed out, a Coors Light, and
Yeah.
that is because of the adjunct. If this was an all malt beer, it would be more golden hued just because of the total density of the wort. Um, we also found that it fixed kind of a problem of having higher protein. If
Mm-hmm.
we were to make an all malt beer like this level, it would have higher protein, and that can come to complications when it comes to clarity and also storage ability, and other things like that. So it fixes that problem, and also having less free amino nitrogen
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
allows it just the hops to be able to pop a little bit more. Now, also fermenting with lager yeast,
Mm-hmm.
uh, the lager yeast will put out a little bit of sulfur dioxide, and so it kind of, which is blown off during the fermentation and dry hopping period, but it allows those. It's an antioxidant that
Right.
keeps the beer a little bit fresher and a little bit more shelf stable and bulletproof in the can. So
Hmm.
it was just kind of a very much of a happy surprise. And we called it Western than West Coast because we were saying, well, what are those elements of West Coast? Which let's take them to the extreme. Let's make the color light. Let's make, instead of it just being, uh, not hazy, let's make it completely brilliantly clear.
Hmm.
Let's make it yellow. Let's make it really, really hot. Let's make it aggressively bitter. Kind of like if everybody is leaning toward this hazy tropical sweet thing, let's do the opposite and see if we got any love out there that still want the old school thing. And it turns out a lot of people really enjoyed it. So it was nice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
me too. And just a quick one. I know that you have talked about it before, but people often argue like, hey, what's the difference between this and the IPL? Can you touch a bit about it?
Well, the IPL, I think, well, for one thing, like all things in beer, it is a marketing concept and it is also.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
IPLs at the time, and the IPLs that I had were typically all malt.
Hmm.
Uh, they were fermented cold. They were typically lagered. They were typically dry hopped cold, maybe not
Hmm.
freezing cold, but maybe at regular lager temperature. Lager fermentation temperature is 50 degrees or 54 degrees, something like this Fahrenheit. So 10 or
Right.
12 Celsius. Um, They also typically used like a Munich or a Vienna. The thought here was like, let's make this malt base kind of like a export beer, kind of
Mm,
like a big,
mm.
like an Oktoberfest almost
Yeah,
style beer.
yeah, yeah.
And then we'll have this nice little hopping on top, and we'll keep the hop bitterness down, not very aggressive. And then the hops that they used were typically some of the new school. I'm sorry, not new school. Some of the American hops, and then also some. I found that a lot of recipes people were using newer German hops, especially the
Mm,
Yule
mm.
varieties, like Hallertau
Right,
Blanc and Mandarin
right,
area.
right.
They're
Humel
really
and something
nice
like that.
hops.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
um, they're really nice hops. I don't really think that. I mean, I had some good examples of it.
Hmm.
Um, they were nice, but as a concept, I don't think that they really worked as well because the dry hopping kind of came across as a bit grassy. Those hops just don't really have that big IP. Like as an IPA drinker, having
Right,
an
right.
IPL is like not as satisfying. You want something with that bitterness, with that pine and resin. You want
Yeah,
something that is really um,
punchy. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, crunchy. And so I think it is. I think cold IPA is far more like West Coast IPA, even though
Hmm.
it's using a lager yeast, than it is IPL. Um, we actually, when we made our first cold IPA, between the owners and I, we were talking like, well, should we call it IPL? And I said that I wanted to call
Hmm.
it cold IPA,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
they thought it was a dumb name. I mean, it is kind of a dumb name, but I'm like, yeah, but who cares? It's just fun. Like
Yeah.
beer, this should be fun. Like, let's see what
Hmm.
happens.
Hmm. Yeah.
Because it's not an IPL. It had a lot of IPLs, and we made something that doesn't taste like an IPL, so it should warrant a new name. It should have a new name. And so we called it Cold IPA, mainly as a reference to like those
Hmm.
the advertising of Budweiser and Coors, and,
Right.
where they're like bold, cold from the
Yeah,
Rockies,
drink cold. Yeah,
drink
yeah, yeah.
cold. The ironic thing is that we actually ferment it warm, so it's more of just like it's a refreshing IPA. It's cleaner, it's
Yeah.
crispy.
The perception, right? I mean, like, yeah, yeah.
The argument I kept saying to them was, if you put it on a board and it just says cold IPA, I think people will order it, take a drink, and go, okay, I get it. It's cold. It's kind of like
Hmm.
cold.
Hmm.
It's clean, you know. But
Right.
if we call it IPL, people are like, what does that mean? Because it's confusing to people. So
Hmm. Yeah, it's kind of different camp of storytelling too. I mean, like, you have
yeah,
some backstory for it and all that kind of stuff. I just wonder, like, do you remember or recall the moment you sample your first batch, like the reaction and that kind of thing?
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't exactly. We actually had a little bit of Czech Sots in the first batch. I thought that was going to
Oh,
keep some of the lager bitterness more spicy. Kind of like to be more lager like. It really
right.
did. I don't think it hit its stride until probably the third or fourth batch, and then we're like, okay,
Okay.
this is getting where we want it to go. So I think that we ended up using ISO, this a liquid hop product
The
just after
CO2 extract.
bitterness.
Yeah.
Not a CO2 extract. It's a product called Flex. It's like
Okay.
nitrogenous alpha acid.
Oh,
Um,
okay. Okay.
so we were using that in junction with the hop. So we were really just laying on the bitterness, and it was something that a lot of Portland brewers have been backing off on bitterness for drinkability's sake. And I've having moved to Portland to open Wayfinder, I
Hmm.
feel like it was a good time to just shake it up and try to do something different.
Got you. Got you. And I think, right now, for this conversation, our foot land to the second part of the ride, and I would like to talk about the trials and tribulations in the process of creating this Western West Coast IPA. Can you help walk us through, we can go with the raw material selection first, and then we move to the process. What's the grain bill like when you're designing
So
it?
yeah, the grain bill is mainly Pilsner malt and an adjunct. So
Hmm.
we were using an American Pilsner malt, something that's really light in color, and then originally we were using rice. And at that time, back then, it was hard to find just raw rice because none of our suppliers, all our suppliers, didn't sell. They sold malt and they didn't sell raw product. If they were going to sell us rice, they would have it broken down.
Oh,
So getting
okay.
more raw product was kind of hard. I ended up using rice flour,
Okay.
just bags of rice flour, and but it was very very dusty. So like
Yeah.
we ended up as we were adding the bags, one person would have to hold a hose and spray water to keep the dust out. You'd have a big
Yeah.
mess.
Oh my
Uh,
God.
yeah, it was fun. So yeah, it was just a regular Pilsner malt, um, and just a regular Pilsner malt and raw rice. We ended up mashing the the rice in the cereal cooker with just a little bit of the barley to keep it from
Hmm.
breaking down, and then boiling it as well. So the rice
Right.
flour needed to be gelatinized. You had to
Hmm.
hydrate it and then boil it to actually get the beta glucan lever to be liquefied, so that you can access the
Okay.
starch inside the rice. And I think that's been
Hmm.
when I taste people's cold IPAs that don't taste right. I think that they're a bit hazy and they taste a bit sweet, and I think it's because they're not getting the full extraction of the rice because the
Mm,
rice doesn't go through the gelatinization step. If they're not actually boiling that rice, um, they're not um, they're not accessing that starch, and then they could end up getting starch in their beer. And
interesting. Hmm.
I haven't really tested it. I've always thought maybe I'd bring a bottle of iodine with me and try it out.
And
But
try dropping it. Yeah. Okay.
but that's
And
pretty much
yeah, yeah.
yeah, that's pretty much that. Because it was like a 30% rice bill.
Hmm.
Um, and we would use domestic Pilsner malt, American Pilsner malt. And so
Hmm.
the malt that's grown here in North America has a higher protein level and a
Hmm.
higher degree of modification. A lot of this is grown for the big lager brewers
Right.
to mix with adjunct anyway. And so that was actually, we were using that to our benefit. Not
Hmm.
using a European malt, which is really grown to be an all malt barley.
Got you. And the adjunct percentage wise, do you play around a lot, or you just coin the number up like 20, 30, 40?
I think
Like
the number ended up being 27, and it really just depended on our brew house size and the size
mm,
of bags of of rice that we were getting. So I think it was
okay.
like for our, I can't remember with Wayfinder, but with our regular Staggers and Jags IPA,
Hmm.
I believe it is. Um, I could be wrong, but I believe it's 11 bags of barley and 5 bags of rice. And we've moved
Okay.
on to using a rice meal. So I've got a rice supplier who is milling it to where it's
Hmm.
a very fine rice meal that
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of like broken rice. If you ever buy
Mm-hmm.
broken rice, a lot of people use it for making congee. We're using that
Mm.
that level of broken down pieces of rice and matching that.
Got you. And do you find any difference between rice and corn in terms of taste wise if you use for this beer?
Yeah, so for IPA, I don't know if it really matters because the dominant flavor profile is going
Hmm.
to be the
The
hops.
hop. Hmm.
I do for the light beers. I've also done a bunch of adjunct beers. We've done corn adjunct beers and rice adjunct beers. And although I like them both, I prefer the rice. I think it's a little bit softer and it has a very specific aroma, especially if you keep
Hmm.
the hops down,
Hmm.
and a gentler mouthfeel. Um, corn can taste kind of boring to us, but corn is also, I mean, here in the United States, corn is incredibly cheap compared to rice.
Hmm.
We
Hmm.
do grow rice in the States. On the West Coast, it's actually grown in California. But corn is ubiquitous in the Midwest, and it's very, 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 very cheap because subsidized by the government.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Um, speaking of rice and corn, I'm not sure if I get this right, but I understand that their sugar profile is kind of different. I think
Right?
rice they are kind of similar to barley, and corn is like just pure dextrose. Am I getting this right? I'm not sure.
No, I mean both corn and rice are starch.
Hmm.
They're very starchy until you start processing them.
Hmm.
But both of them have protein. Actually, corn has a higher protein level than rice.
Oh,
Rice has a
okay.
really low protein level, but more than you'd think. I mean, like when you think about barley, like if you're going to use a two-row barley for an all malt beer, you might want it to be between 9 and 11%, maybe
Hmm.
11.5% protein.
Protein, yeah,
Um, I think corn, I believe is, I think it's like 10 or 8. I'd have to look it up, and I remember rice
yeah,
being like 6 or 8. I mean, they're
yeah.
they're. It's not like there's no protein in them.
Hmm.
It's
It's there, but it's low, right? Yeah.
it's low. Yeah. And I think that I'm not as much of a beer scientist as I should be, but I think it's also the level in which you can break it down because you're not malting rice
Hmm.
or corn. So um, I think some of it just gets, some of that product ends up getting just stuck in the spent grains as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to being liquefied completely.
And by using adjunct, does it impact the cost of your brewing to a certain point? Like, is it becoming cheaper or not? Like, there's nothing
Right.
about it at all.
Well, so rice is actually considerably more expensive than barley, and corn is
Then,
cheaper than barley. So Um, rice doesn't really have, we in here in the, I mean, this depends on where you are in the world, depending, which one is going to be more expensive. We don't grow a lot of rice here, and the rice that we grow is for the dinner table. Um,
okay.
we grow rice for human consumption only,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
with corn, we grow it for feed, for cattle feed, for
Hmm.
chicken feed. There's just a slew of American products. Coca-Cola buys a lot of rice in the form of high fructose corn syrup. I'm sorry, corn. Um,
Yeah.
a lot of our snacks and stuff are corn based. Um, and then barley has very little. I mean, barley is just either grown for feed or it's grown for beer. And
Hmm.
so the cheapest thing is actually corn because it can be used in so many different markets. Um, But I think that if we were to get silos, last time I checked, a silo of corn, which we're not buying, would be like 22 cents a pound, whereas
Hmm.
barley would be like 36 or 40,
Oh.
and then rice is in the 50 to 60 cents a pound.
Hmm.
It jumps.
Yeah. So by the use of adjunct, it is not necessarily translate to the cheaper cost or cost saving kind of stuff,
No,
right?
and it's funny because the Brewers Association, a lot of people here in craft beer have always said, "Oh, they use corn and rice to make the beer cheaper," and that's
Yeah.
not
I
really
mean,
true.
like,
The
hmm.
original lager brewers here in the States were using it to balance the barley that we were growing here in America. The barley that
Hmm.
we grow here in America is higher protein. It's a different climate. Um, Most of the barley here is grown in Canada and
Hmm.
northern Midwest.
Midwest. Hmm.
Yeah, Wisconsin, North Dakota,
Hmm.
that area. So that would be like, I believe Saskatchewan is right above it. Um,
Hmm.
and that is it's very, very cold in the winter and then very hot in the summertime and very flat. So that's where we're growing the barley. It has a different profile than where we grow than European barley, which is known because that's where the a lot of beer started in Europe, and so a lot of the barley is grown there in Belgium, France, Poland, Ukraine, Germany,
Right.
all through there.
Gotcha. Gotcha. So we have the grain bill now. Then we move to the the mashing step. Besides from using the cereal cookers, do you do any particular practice to it, like step mash and all that?
Of course, we do step mashing for everything. So after the cereal is cooked, um, we would break down because we are depending on the enzymes in the barley
Hmm.
to break down the rice.
Hmm.
So we have to use those enzymes. That's why we use an American barley because it's loaded with enzymes.
Right.
Uh, so we would mash it at 62, and then 68, then 72, and then 78. So
Oh,
that
you hit all the marks, right?
we hit them all because
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
want to make sure that the beer finishes dry and
Hmm.
that we create a lot of maltose. Making beer, in my mind, is always trying to make a lot of maltose.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
maltose is two glucoses stuck together with an alpha 1
Yeah.
4 bond. We think of it as being, it's called maltose because it's common from malted barley, but
Yeah.
you can make maltose out of any two glucose. So,
Yeah. Cool. And so can we consider it as a decocted beer as
yeah,
well?
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
cereal cooking is a decoction.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's literally the same thing. So yeah, it's when we think about decocted beer, we're thinking about barley that's decocted, and
Yeah.
that changes a little bit because boiling barley destroys the barley's enzymes.
Hmm.
It liquefies its protein. It liquefies its husk. You're boiling the
Hmm.
husks, so some of the tannin that you're getting from that
Hmm.
husk being boiled. Um, and you're liquefying the whole thing. So you get a little bit more flavor profile out of you get more of a barley flavor profile out of a decocting of barley. But so it's like a decoction, but it's the decoction is from the rice itself or corn.
That's cool. That's cool. And I assume that the boiling is typical boiling process. Anything special about it?
Nope, nope.
Okay.
The one thing that we found, I think, I don't know what Wayfinder is doing now, but we moved from going for the IPA. We
Hmm.
stopped using rice and started using corn,
Hmm.
mainly because rice is will really boil over. And
Oh.
if you've ever like made congee at home, you probably know this too. Once it starts boiling, it can really get a lot of foam,
Yeah. Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
and that would happen in our tanks, and it could boil over, and it would make a big mess. But we found that corn was just a lot easier to process that way; it wouldn't boil over.
Mm.
So we switched to corn for the IPAs and kept the rice for just the simple beers.
Would that be possible to relate to the kind of heat source that you use, like electric or steam jacket or direct fire?
Right. Um, well, if you're watching the boil, you can make sure to
Mhm.
turn it off, turn it back on again. But
Yeah.
we were
It's
using a steam system. We weren't using a
mhm.
direct fire, so it was hot. But it's more of just an action of the boiling rice itself.
Right.
I'm sure that there
Gotcha.
probably are some exogenous enzymes that you could add to break it down so it doesn't do
Hmm.
that. But
Yeah.
we wanted to keep the beer very natural.
Gotcha. Gotcha. All right. Let's move to the hopping part. So let's talk about the hop selection first. Yeah. For the bittering, what's your hop of choice?
So I'll talk instead of talking about Wayfinder, I'll talk about Staggers and Jags, our cold
Yeah. Yeah.
IPA.
Please. Please. Yeah.
Um, we use kind of right now we're using some mosaic just for bittering. Our kind of my
Mm-hmm.
move for bittering is to use the it's a product I mentioned it earlier. It's by Barth Haas and it's called
Mm-hmm.
Flex.
Mm-hmm.
It is I believe it's just a liquefied um, alpha
I
acid,
summarize. Okay. Mm-hmm.
isomerized alpha acid. Using that and then just a little bit of a high alpha hop. I like to
Mhm.
put a little bit of hops at the very beginning of the boil just to give it something. I think
Mhm.
it kind of keeps the hop breakdown. Maybe I'm being superstitious, but just a little bit of, we'll use either Mosaic or
I'm
Magnum
on.
or, yeah, just a little bit just to keep so it's not, it has something to boil on.
Yeah, I'm on the same camp. Like yeah,
Yeah,
just a safety measure. But yeah, yeah,
yeah, just a little bit.
yeah.
So we use that and flex, and then we reserve most of the hopping for the last 10 minutes, and then during the
Hmm.
whirlpool.
Right.
And the way I look at it, I'm always like I'm a two hop kind of IPA brewer. I always think you should choose two.
Hmm.
With this cold IPA here, Staggers and Jags, we do three. We do Mosaic, Centennial, and Nelson Sauvin.
Oh,
And
okay.
I really like the way Nelson Sauvin on the hot side. We don't dry hop with Nelson Sauvin. I really like it as a boiled hop. I think
Mm.
that some of those more diesely characters don't come out. You get more of that currant
Mm.
gooseberry kind of thing. I find it really, really pleasant.
From the
Uh,
hot side. Hmm.
but
Hmm.
yeah, just for the hot side. So we use Nelson Sauvin, and there's not an IPA I've ever made that doesn't have some Centennial in it. I'm a big fan of Centennial. I feel like Centennial is like the bass player, in a
Hmm.
good song.
Hmm.
He's keeping it. You don't In a great song you can hear him, but you're not always paying attention to him. But if he's
Yeah.
not there, he's missing. You know what I mean? And you have
Yeah,
to have
yeah, yeah. It's kind of something's not in
something's off.
place here. Yeah,
Yeah,
something's off here. Yeah.
you have to have that good the anchor hop, the hop that kind of makes the beer all come together.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
that's Centennial for me. I know other people like Cascade and some of the old, these are kind of old. For now, they're old school hops. They're kind of newer when I started.
Yeah.
But so it's mainly Mosaic. I'm sorry, it's mainly Nelson Sauvin and
Hmm.
Centennial. There's just a little bit of Mosaic in there, also on the hot side because Mosaic. I also like Mosaic boiled. I like it dry
Mm.
hop, sure, but I think that a little bit of boil, and by boiled I mean like in the last 10 minutes or maybe a little bit in the
Hmm.
whirlpool. I
Hmm.
think that some of the undesirable flavors and aromas from Mosaic are gone if they go through a little bit of heat, but you get some of that
Hmm.
blue raspberry is what
Mm.
it's like a fake flavor that's in candies in the States. It's
Hmm.
blue raspberry. It's kind of like, I get it from Mosaic. It's really a special hop for me.
Got you. And does the beer sees hefty amount of whirlpool charge or just
Yes, it does.
moderate one?
Well, it depends on who you're asking. For me, I think it's a lot, because we make lager beers and we
Oh
use
yeah.
very little hops. But for the big East Coast IPA brewers, you could probably double our hop load if you wanted to. But
Right.
I think I think we're at about, I would have to say 2.5 or 3 pounds per barrel on the
Oh,
hot
for
side.
the okay
Yeah,
on the hot side.
yeah.
So okay,
Or
that's
maybe it's a bit less than that. Let me do the math. I'm
okay.
kind of
Sure.
here. um, so it's like 13. It's about maybe it's a total. I think it's about a probably about a pound per barrel.
Okay. All
Probably more
right.
like a pound per barrel.
Okay, and to be safe later for the cold side addition.
Yeah, and the
Over.
cold side edition, we always add Chinook. I still add Chinook because the original Wayfinder one always had Chinook, and I
Hmm.
love Chinook as a dry hop. It's such a great hop.
Right.
We usually select a Chinook that is picked uh, a little bit later, so it has a bit of pineapple aroma to it.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
and we use Chinook, we use Cascade. We also are able to. We're lucky enough that we're so close to the hop farms. I know the farmers that are growing some of the hops that we use, and that makes it very easy for me to get the ones that I want. So we're getting Cascade from Loza Farms,
Hmm.
uh, and then Chinook. And what is the third hop in the dry hop? We are using HBC 586, and which is
Crush.
now
Uh-huh.
called Crush. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
I was an early adopter of Crush. I think Crush is a great hop. I think it's a lot like Mosaic in
Hmm.
it's kind of like a really great. Um, to me, it kind of comes across like Mosaic in a different way, but in that
Hmm.
same, it has that nice tropical thing, but it's not over the top.
Yeah, I think it is an all-rounder hops. It play well, in hot side, cold side. Cool. Okay, let's dive into the fermentations. For the yeast selection, what's your preferred yeast? Like, I know it's your house yeast, but it's like any specific strain that you can share.
Well, we use 3470, and
Mm-hmm.
we get ours from Brewing Science Institute in Colorado.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, they do. I mean, I think I can't say exactly where they got their copy of
Right. Right.
3470, but
Mm-hmm.
I seem to think it is my favorite. Um, we will we will cool in the wort at 10 degrees and ferment this beer at like 18.5. So
All
we'll
right.
we'll pitch it with a normal amount of yeast, not a we won't over pitch it like you would a lager, but
Mm-hmm.
we'll put it in there quite cold with sterile, and we use sterile air. We use sterile air instead of
Okay.
bottled
To add
oxygen
it. Mm-hmm.
to aerate it. And the reason why we go in so cold is that we want the sterile air to be more soluble. So if we
Mm.
were to go in warm, the sterile air is not as soluble. And we do need a lot of oxygen for this. That also says that we have about an 8.5 degree um, jump
Gap. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
between the coolant temperature and the fermentation temperature. And so really this yeast really gets to get going before even the glycol ever comes to chill it. And
Mm.
I find that it doesn't even get to 18.5 until, day 2 or day 3.
Mm. Okay.
It starts really slow and then ramps up. And I think that keeps a lot of those more clean
Mm.
flavors. I think that a lot of people when brewing with lager yeast can make the mistake of adding too much yeast, adding too much oxygen,
Mm-hmm.
maybe fermenting too warm, or cooling in too warm, and thinking, okay, I'm going to make. It's kind of like having a really large balloon and then pushing it back down again instead of starting small and letting it become a big balloon. It's like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
you want it to slowly blossom instead of, because once it's already this,
Surprising them. Yeah.
then you start having the off flavors. I think. Um, and
Interesting. And
yeah,
yeah, does the fermenting beer see head pressure, or you just blow it out like free?
we blow it out actually. We used to do spunding where we would
Hmm.
we would dry hop it when there was a little bit of fermentation left
Hmm.
and let it ferment at 1 bar until it was finished.
Hmm.
And um, now we found that we let it ferment completely out, and then we'll dry hop it when it's. We don't actually want to dry hop it when there's a bunch of yeast in there because we find that a lot of the dry hop on the yeast will end up taking away a lot of our dry hop character, and it goes
Mm,
away.
mm.
It goes away down the drain with the yeast,
Okay.
or at least that's what I think is happening. And so we get more of a more pronounced dry hop aroma when we wait just a little bit longer until the end of fermentation.
Right. So the current practice is just to wait for fermentation to finish, and then you just dump the yeast, and then you add the hop at the fermentation temperatures, like 18 C ish kind of thing.
Yeah, and then we'll actually put it up to 15 psi, but we're not
Mm.
really getting. If we do get another fermentation, early on when we first started this beer, the Amarillo that we used at Wayfinder was
Hmm.
known for hop creep,
Oh yeah.
and so the other thing that I did with this beer was um, I would dry hop it early because I knew that if I would make the hop creep, I wanted to get it done with before the
Mm.
yeast was finished. So by
Okay.
adding that Amarillo early, it took that beer from 3.3 Plato down to 1.4 Plato. Um,
What? Oh,
yeah,
okay.
so we started at 15 and we would finish between 1.3 and 1.6.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
incredibly dry, and that was part of that flavor profile because you had this intensely bitter beer, and then
Hmm.
also having it very very um, it was really satiating on the tongue. Plus, you need a lot of that hop matter on the hot side, the boiled
Hmm.
hop flavor, because you're getting a lot of the polyphenol from
Hmm.
the hops are adding mouthfeel. And if you don't have them, then you're missing the mouthfeel.
Right. And do you croissant too for this beer?
Originally, we were
Croissanting?
croissanting.
Hmm.
Originally,
Hmm.
we were croissanting, but we did not do it anymore
Hmm.
because originally we were basing this also on Italian Pilsner, where we would ferment it and chill it down, harvest the yeast, and then Kreutzen dry hop. We
Ah,
would Kreutzen and dry hop at the same time, so it would have a re-fermentation. But
right.
I didn't want to do that with this beer because I didn't want it to be cold during the dry hop. I knew that the yeast could finish it, but I didn't finish the fermentation of the Kreuzening and all that stuff at 45 degrees or,
Hmm.
sorry, what would that be? 7 or 6 Celsius. Um,
Probably.
I'm trying. I'm trying. I don't. I'm not sure. I'm trying to stay away from American units right now, just to help everybody else out.
That's
Um,
all right. Yeah.
um, so we found that we. I think we stopped doing that for. Originally we were doing the Kreutzen dry hopping for Italian Pilsner,
Hmm.
and I think we even moved away from that too, just because it was another added step, and it was really hard to schedule it out because you had to have another beer that was similar to that beer, like
Hmm.
a Pilsner or a Helles or something that you were
Hmm.
brewing to be able to pull beer
Hmm.
off of it.
Yeah.
And sometimes you didn't want to take any beer off there because you needed that beer to sell. So it always became this juggling match. So we had to kind of
Mm.
mix doing a lot of that stuff. It was
Yeah. Find the balancing point. And I think quick question here about the dry hop. Like, are you on the camp of splitting the charge, DDH, TDH kind of thing, or you just do with one big bang charge?
I've done it a lot of different ways,
Hmm.
and I think that the best way was we would kind of do a fermentation hop.
Hmm.
So we'd run our cold IPA with the Chinook
Hmm.
at fermentation. So we would
Hmm.
throw them in at the end of pitching the yeast. We drop the Chinook in, and then
Oh,
we
okay.
would do the late charge later. And I think that we got a lot of. It was kind of like dip hopping, if you're familiar with dip
Hmm.
hopping.
Yeah, yeah,
But I think in dip hopping you actually use warm wort,
yeah.
right?
This one
Um,
is, yeah, is
but we didn't do warm. We would call it like halfway dip hopping. We would just use cold hops on the cold, or almost.
got you,
But
got you.
you have more
Interesting.
survivables. The idea was that you had more survivables on some hops, survivable
Hmm.
compounds on some hops, and more late survivables on other hops. So how
Hmm.
do we magnify each of those things? Well, some of those hops like Chinook that maybe has more early survivables that would be better in the whirlpool. Excuse me, in the whirlpool, um,
Hmm.
you can just use for that quasi um, dip hop.
Gotcha. Yeah. So okay. You dry hop, preparing to carbonate the beer. Quick question here is like, do you have any prefer finishing pH for the beer? I mean, for this IPA,
I mean,
West.
all IPAs typically finish a bit higher than they should.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but no, I don't ever adjust the pH after fermentation
Okay.
uh,
Okay.
because I think that it seems a bit dangerous. I feel like I can
Gotcha. Gotcha.
add
All
too
right.
much or have a problem. But
Okay.
I would like the hops to always, or the IPAs always, to be below 4.6. They sometimes
Mm-hmm.
are 4.7.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is that you need to have your pH below 4.6 to be considered
Food
acidic.
safe.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Um, but when you have a lot of dry hopping, you're putting a lot of vegetable mass in there, and it's going to raise the pH.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
Gotcha.
I don't know. I know a lot of people nowadays are adjusting final beer pHs, and we haven't really done it. Um,
Mm-hmm.
that's probably something I should probably be exploring, but I've always been kind of nervous about that.
Gotcha. The cold, yeah, post fermentation adjustment is pretty risky. Yeah.
Yeah, I just don't know how we're going to really move. I mean, I guess we put findings in. We could add it with our findings,
Mm-hmm.
and it would
Mm-hmm.
probably be. But would that affect our findings? I don't know. I'm afraid of
Right.
overdoing it. I really is
Right.
really
Right.
say I'm afraid of screwing it up, and
Mm-hmm.
So I also just don't like to add. I don't like to add things, even if it is food grade, like food grade phosphoric acid.
Hmm.
I know what I'm adding is been, we've done this for a long time. I I know as far as the supply chain goes, whether it's hops or malts, like these things haven't really hurt anybody. I'm always
Hmm.
very wary of just jumping into a new process
Hmm.
and adding something, especially post fermentation, that might, that people are having to consume.
Right, right. Okay. The next one is when you finish dry hop, you prepare the beer to carbonate. When you chill the beer down, do you do like a slow stepping down, like a
Like you would in a
typical?
lager beer.
Yeah, yeah.
We don't. I mean, we do over about 3 days. We'll chill it
Hmm.
down just so that it's easier on our glycol cooling. But I don't really think that when you're slow cooling um, beer that you're getting a yeast benefit there. I know there's a
Hmm.
lot of brewers that do. Um, I've found that when I chill it down the way I do, about we usually go from 10 degrees to 6 to
Hmm.
3 to 1 to 0. Just to make sure that we're getting the yeast out. We're not adding so much chilling that we're
Hmm.
upsetting, that we're hurting anything or creating freezing.
Hmm.
Uh, so we don't do step. We'll chill it down quite quickly.
So the same thing applies to your lagers too, right?
That's true.
Okay.
We'll do the loggers at 3 days, but we don't
Hmm.
have like a whole like 1 degree per day.
Yeah, you
We
just
don't do
do like
14 days or something.
three
And we
days
do
interval.
feel very cold. I mean, we lager at 0 degrees. I mean, it's not that cold. We could be lagering at -2.
Hmm.
Um, I know of some lager breweries now in Europe that are lagering at -2.5. That's
Wow.
pretty
Okay.
cold. And to
Hmm.
make a Pilsner beer at -2.5 is quite cold. Um, we found with our tank geometry that it's more likely to freeze the beer if we try to go that
Hmm.
cold.
Hmm.
But you get
Hmm.
all sorts of benefits from being that cold. You get you I I think that you are creating more chill haze, and by
Hmm.
creating the chill haze, you're allowing it to drop or you're allowing it to um, fall out.
Hmm.
I think that you're storing the beer colder means even less oxidation. You're
Hmm.
solubilizing CO2 in that process much easier at 0 or -2 than you would be at 4. If
Hmm.
you try
Hmm.
lagering a beer at 4, um, I feel like lagering beer at 0 for a day is better than lagering a beer at 4 for a week. I think
Oh
you get
yeah.
more done. So
Hmm. Hmm.
keeping it cold.
Got it. I think I forget to ask one thing about the dry hop. Like, do you do any kind of agitation to the the hop sediments, or just let it just fall?
We just let it fall, and I've talked to a couple brewers because we have
Hmm.
15 barrel tanks that we dry hop in,
Hmm.
and for 15 barrels, I think that agitating it would probably give it some benefit.
Hmm.
It depends on how big the tank is. Once you get to 40 barrels and above, by the time the hops already get through, they've done everything they're going to do. Especially during the hop creep time when people were really having more hop creep, dealing with more hop creep, uh,
Hmm.
which I think that I haven't heard too many people complaining about hop creep as much.
Hmm.
Either brewers have figured out how to deal with it, or um, maybe a lot of the hop growers have increased their kiln temperatures. Um, I
Hmm.
don't really know, but we don't get as much hop creep as we used to.
Hmm.
And I know that when you agitate, you can really have some big issues with VDK because you are introducing oxygen again. You are moving the hops around a bit more. And if this is late fermentation and the yeast has already dropped out, then you can create a certain amount of alpha acetolactate, which is then going to become diacetyl later. And
Hmm.
luckily for us, we use lager yeast on these, and so um, no, even if it is cold, it will finish the alpha acetolactate. But
Hmm.
um,
Hmm.
that's why I've always been against kind of rousing because I'm afraid of creating another off flavor later.
Gotcha, gotcha. And I think the last one for the dry hop, I just pops up. It's like about the contact time. Are you a short camper or the long contact time camper?
I'm in the short contact time camp. I think
Okay.
that by the time it gets to the bottom, it's done. So we'll dry hop it, and the next day we'll remove it from the bottom.
Okay. So we're talking about like 24 to 48 hours
Yeah,
water contact. Okay. Okay. Got it.
which is
And
a
I
long
think,
time for us. We're kind of like pub style brewing. We're not like a big
oh yeah.
production brewery. Some of those guys are the contact time of eight hours or less.
Hmm. How often do you brew then? Say per week.
We brew between 2 and 3 times a week.
Okay. And this is also combined heater island as well.
Yes. Yeah. Same
Okay.
brewery. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. All right. I think we pretty much cover everything.
Clarity.
Sorry.
How do we
Sorry.
clarify it? We
Uh,
clarify. We use a spindisol. We use a finding agent silicasol to
oh,
clarify.
okay.
And because we're using such a high adjunct, and the beer is, even though it's dry hop that high, we don't have problems with it getting crystal clear.
Mm-hmm.
When I was
Mm-hmm.
first making cold IPAs, we were finding it and then we were running it through a filter.
Mm,
But if you were not incredibly careful and you got a bunch of hop plug into your filter, because we had a plate and frame filter,
mm-hmm.
it was absolutely a nightmare to get the hop bits out of the filter. And
All right.
there was a couple times that my assistant brewers wanted to kill me because we kept on
Of that,
jamming up the filter and it took a long time to get it clear.
mhm, to break
So
down, clean, put it back.
we
Yeah.
stopped filtering any cold IPAs. We're just finding now.
Okay. You're just finding no centrifuge, just
A
finding.
centrifuge. Yeah. We don't own a centrifuge. We're too small.
Okay. Okay. Uh, I think I need to back up to the beginning a bit here in the creation of Western and West Coast Cold IPA. I forget to ask about the water.
Hmm.
The profile. You have any preferred profile for the water?
You know, I think no, not really. We
Mm-hmm.
add a certain amount of calcium sulfate. The water
Mm-hmm.
that we have, both in Portland, Oregon, and also here in McMinnville, is all snow runoff from
Mm-hmm.
the mountains. And so, if you look at a water report, it has almost next to nothing. Like our calcium level between 3 and 0,
Mm-hmm.
magnesium between 5 and 0. You
It's
know,
pretty much
it's almost like
natural
distilled water. Yeah.
RO, right?
So we which is beautiful because we get to make Pilsner Kel is known for its very 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 soft water
Soft. Yeah.
from its wells, and when we're making Pilsner, our number one Pilsner, we don't adjust the water at all. We keep it almost completely naked. Um,
Oh,
but with this beer, we would add a certain amount of calcium sulfate to just get the calcium level up enough for yeast health and for amylase health. We need to make sure that there's enough calcium there for our alpha amylase to finish the rise off.
gotcha. And you don't play around much with the sulfate chloride ratio kind of stuff.
Not really.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I usually don't look at it too deeply. Usually we use calcium chloride if we're making a beer that we want to emphasize the malts,
Mm-hmm.
calcium sulfate if we're going to emphasize the hops and the bitterness, and a blend of the two if we're trying to use both.
That's cool, man. That's
Yeah,
cool.
easy money.
Yeah, cool. I think there's a lot of thinkings and principles behind the creation of this cold IPA, and well, it is kind of mind-boggling to think about that the style is now, I call it style, but the beer is now like approaching 10 years old,
Oh my.
right?
Yeah,
Right? It's like
yeah,
2018, so it's like seven
yeah.
years. So within this journey, how do you find that the audience is receiving this concept of beer?
You know, I I wish I had my finger more on the dial
Hmm.
to know exactly how people feel about it. Here
Hmm.
in Portland, not a lot of people make cold IPA or sell cold IPA,
Hmm.
but it is incredibly popular wherever I go. So if I
Mm,
go to Washington D.C., I see it. If I go to Minneapolis, I see it. Um, Sometimes I go to Europe and I see it. Like,
that's great.
and which is great. I think it's a fun thing to do, but
Mm-hmm.
in Portland, maybe there's just so many breweries. So I don't know how many people are really. I know that customers like it
Hmm.
because it seems it's easy and it's easy to understand. I think a lot of brewers can be a little fussy about it. They
Right.
think of it as being, well, it's actually an IPL or blah blah blah. It's like, just get off your high horse and just
Yeah.
it's a cool little beer. Go ahead and try to
Yeah.
make one because you
There'll
might
be
find
like,
out that it tastes really good and it's easy to drink and people enjoy the name.
yeah, they'll be like, oh, it's dry hop cream ale or some kind. I'm like, hey, yeah, it's different, man.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I really like the concept of the beer, and I really enjoy. I think at that time was with Wayfinder. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's really awesome. And just to tell you that that Cold IPA Western West Coast exists here too in Thailand.
Oh, that's awesome. Cool. That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's great. That's great. Yeah. So to come to think to this closing thing, you once quote you said that in beers, it all comes to marketing, and the term IPA too, as well. It was born of the marketing thing, like 19th century.
Yeah.
And so to close this session, what is the cold IPA to you? Can you just give a brief definition if someone just walk into your Go Dot and slash heater on tap room and just asks you this question?
It means a clean IPA. It means a really, really clean, easy drinking IPA. If you think about cold beer,
Hmm.
is that your lawnmower beer? Is that your easy drinking beer? Well, this is an IPA that's more easy drinking. It's not going to come across as sweet. It's not going to come across as uh, too much like orange juice. It's going to taste like IPA.
Hmm. Man, I'm thirsty.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, I wish
But
it's like 4 p.m. for me here.
it is 5 o'clock now. I'm going to walk out to the tap room and have a beer, I believe.
Yeah, right on time. And I think it's great, closing talk. And this is where we'll end the session. So, Kevin, thanks so much for, joining the platform and taking us through this Western and West Coast IPA journey, sharing your ideas and thinking behind, the creation of this beer.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it was a blast, man. Thank you. And hopefully I can catch up with you later in person sometime in future, maybe
That'd be great.
visiting Godot and Heated Islands in McMinnville.
I would love to go to Thailand as well.
You're very, you're very welcome. You're very welcome.
Right on.
Okay, cool, man. Thanks so much. I have to send you off now, and
All right.
thank you. Cheers.
All right. Cheers.
Bye. Here you go, man. If there's one thing that I would like to tell all of you guys, like the takeaway from this session is to be creative. Um, by talking to Kevin, you see that in every kind of steps he has this reason or principles or idea behind why he do what he do. Why he select this um, adjunct, why he use rice, why he use corn, what is the mashing technique that associated with the grain bill that he used, what is the thinking behind all the temperature rest, 62, 68, 72C mash out, fermentations, and all of those things. So, know your science of brewing is one of the benefit, and also be creative. That's also the plus to create the exceptional beers. So, and whoever think that the idea of adjunct lager, malt liquor, can influence the creation of another variation of West Coast IPA. And believe me, this beer is absolutely delicious. So that's all for today's session. The Good Burp session will be back in no time. Stay tuned until next time. Cheers and sawadee krap.